Hi everyone, it's Professor Trent. Welcome to Chapter 5, Obstacles to Better Communication, your Hume 115 lecture summary. All right, friends, meet me on page 181 and then also on page 202. So as always, you know me, I like to start with the summary. So put a pen on 181 and we can go back to it. Review of major points for Chapter 5. All right. So this chapter is focused on the ways in which people communicate, both poorly and how they communicate well. Specifically, what are the errors in communication? You know by now that when you are making an argument or someone is offering their argument to you, communication is key. Using terms that are precise, using evidence that is cogent and strong and clear, and also crafting an argument that is well organized so that people can follow your talking points. Now, we all know that there are many people who offer us arguments that aren't always clear, precise, cogent, and strong. So let's talk about some of the obstacles to better communication. Meet me on page 202. All right, so in this chapter, it covers euphemisms, innuendos, sloppy sentence structure, and violating any rules of discourse, including fallacies. Now, students often love to learn about fallacies. Fallacies are simply flaws in reasoning, all right? So now that you know what a fallacy is, you get to gently point out fallacies to people who are making an argument that has a flaw in reasoning. And we're going to go into some of those details in just a minute. Euphemisms are kind of fun, actually, because they're everywhere. You just don't realize that we use them. For instance, it's very rare in American culture, at least in the South, that someone might say just very bluntly, he died, right? Often in this particular culture in the Southeast, they might say he passed away. Now, he passed away is not clear at all, but it is a much more gentle way of saying that the person died. And so euphemisms you probably encounter every day. And if you've made it this far in the video, I want you to type in some more examples of euphemisms that you have heard in your everyday life. All right, so let's look at the glossary. These are the words I'd like for you to highlight. Burden of proof, counter-argument, euphemism, fallacy, fallacy of avoiding the issue, avoiding the question, innuendo, issue you already know, knowledge you already know, principle of charity, proof you already know, red herring fallacy, and shifting the burden of proof. Now, when I said you already know issue was back a couple of chapters. Knowledge, think truths you are justified in believing, evidence that you've already known to be true. And then proof, think premises, evidence, right? The argument ought to be convincing and therefore it must contain proof, premises, the building blocks of an argument, those pieces of evidence. Now, you as the person making the argument have the burden of proof. Let me say that again. If you are the person making the claim, the burden of proof is on you. So for your final projects, you are making the argument about how critical thinking skills that you've learned in this class are going to help you in your career, your personal life, your community. You get to choose which area you want to focus on, but the burden of proof is on you to prove to me the claim that you are making. That's what burden of proof means. So let's head through this chapter very quickly, but definitely concentrate on the review of major points and the glossary. All right, so how many times do we not realize what other people are saying or maybe not what we're saying? A lot, right? We are, sometimes our communication skills are not that great, especially, with the age of social media. Sorry, my camera was slipping. With the age of social media, we've gotten used to communicating in really short bursts, and so we don't often communicate thoroughly. So take a little glimpse through some of the rules of abusive communication and then head on over to euphemisms. So the great question is, why are euphemisms poor communication? They're poor communication because they aren't clear. They don't precisely state what is going on. Instead of saying he died, I say he passed away. Well, what does that mean? What did he pass? Where's away? Where did he go? So we want to avoid euphemisms, even though they are a gentler way often of saying things. They aren't exactly clear. They're definitely not clear. All right, so euphemisms is on page 185, 186. Definitely go back and look at that. An innuendo is a negative suggestion made by a disguised reference or veiled comment about a person. You'll often hear innuendo, the actual word innuendo, used in modern music. And so next time you're listening to your favorite song, listen for the word innuendo and listen for actual innuendos. Innuendos can be sometimes a little bit risque, so a lot of songwriters use innuendos in their music. If you've made it thus far in the video, write down some song examples or spaces where you've heard of innuendos. You don't have to tell us specifically what they are, but you can make the reference and we can go look it up later. All right. Burden of proof. Again, the burden of proof lies on the person making the argument. So, if I shift the burden of proof to the other person, I am violating good communication. In other words, if I make an argument, let's say Mary is making an argument to me. Mary has a claim. She's trying to convince me of her claim. And when I ask her for proof, she says to me, well, you just have to believe me, or it's up to you to find the evidence. She has just shifted the burden of proof from her to me. That is a violation of good communication and critical thinking. Another violation is a fallacy, page 193. A fallacy is a flaw in reasoning. One of the most common fallacies is red herring. And you're like, what is a red herring? Well, a herring is a fish. And so imagine if you're in an argument with someone, you're talking about a critical thinking claim. Let's say the claim is to vote or not vote. And the person who's making the argument is trying to convince you not to vote. And then all of a sudden, they throw out this random piece of evidence that has nothing to do with voting. That is called a red herring because it's intended to distract you. So imagine right now during this video, if I were really cool and knew how to edit well, I could do it. Imagine a red fish literally going across the screen, all right? It would distract you. So a fallacy of a red herring is submitting a piece of evidence, a premise that is distracting to the listener in order to redirect their attention from the actual issue at hand. So red herring is the most common fallacy. Now that you know it, you can start to look for it everywhere. If you remember a specific example of a time when it's happened to you, leave a comment below. All right, let's see. Let's go through this and definitely head back through and look at some of the details on fallacies. I want to shift back to burden of proof, all right? Burden of proof, put a star by that in your glossary because it is important that the duty of the burden of proof falls on the person making the argument. Counter argument, you're also going to see in your upcoming quizzes. That's when let's say I'm making an argument with you, attempt to undermine another argument. I attempt to undermine your argument. That is also a barrier in communication. That breaks the rules. I should not undermine your argument. There's a couple of ways of doing this. One of the most common is to use a fallacy called a straw man fallacy. If you watch the videos, you remember hearing about straw man fallacy. It's not in your book. You won't be tested on it, but it's a very common counter argument in which I undermine your argument by weakening it, hence straw, right, in order to dispel it. Now, principle of charity, I do want to talk about. When someone brings us an argument or a claim, the principle of charity is the benefit of the doubt, right? So the benefit of the doubt means that we hear out their argument, right? And we understand that we're using our experience and our knowledge at the time in the moment in order to try to understand their argument. Now, it could be that they are offering a claim on something that we know nothing about and don't have not much knowledge on. And let's say we don't happen to have something that we can go research immediately. Let's say we don't have our phone with us, or we don't have a laptop, we don't have a book with us, so we can't look it up immediately. Your job then is to offer the person the principle of charity. Now, the principle of charity is the benefit of the doubt, but it's okay if you feel like they're making a completely unreasonable claim. It's okay to suspend your belief and judgment and valuation in their argument until you can do some research. One of my favorite things to say as a critical thinker is, I appreciate your argument. I'm not sure about it. I need some time to look up some information and dig a little deeper. If someone presses you for a quick decision on something, it's okay to say, you know what, I'm not quite sure yet. I need more evidence, okay? But you can still extend people the principle of charity, the benefit of the doubt in your communication when it comes to arguments. So we've covered proof, burden of proof, principle of charity, fallacies, shifting the burden of proof, red herring fallacy, innuendos, and euphemisms. Wow, we did a lot in almost 12 minutes. So friends, feel free to rewind this and listen to anything again. Meanwhile, leave a comment below naming one thing that you learned from the video. All right, thanks so much for watching. Take care. Bye.